where my thoughts escaping, home, where my music's playing, home, where my love lies waiting silently for me. Closer to my dream.
Good morning. Welcome to Real East Savvy. You're back on WTOB 96.3 FM, 980 if you're listening in on the AM, and to the virtual audience that listening wherever I can take you. Today I have a guest that I've been chasing for this interview for the past year. You realize it's been 12 months since I first reached out to Denise Leggett, who is now the former Region 4 director of HUD, that was in charge of 8 states. I believe was the biggest of the, or is the biggest of the 10 regions across the country. Is that correct?
Yes, largest of the 10 regions.
Which included our state of North Carolina, South Carolina. I'm doing this. If I mess up, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, right? Florida,
North Carolina, Mississippi, Tennessee, Kentucky, Georgia. Let me see. I said I'm all North and South Carolina. Mississippi. Did I say that?
Yes,
Mississippi.
Well, the audience gets the idea. You were running things for the South for HUD.
Right. and also includes Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So yes, I was oversaw those as well.
Yeah. So I'm sure at this point you're enjoying a great, well-deserved vacation after 4 years of a whole lot of frequent flyer miles.
Yes.
I've done a lot of research, and again, we started this discussion 12 months ago, and you had just been that busy, and COVID hit. A couple of opportunities that I was able to discuss with you in your office, and always seemed like you were in the midst of a lot of things going on at the time. So I'm glad to finally have had the opportunity to get you on the show. And in doing research on you, as over the years, you've received numerous awards, including being named Outstanding Woman in America in 1983, Who's Who in Black America in 2014, and Atlanta's Top 100 Women of Influence in 2019. And that's just a portion of them. Was there any awards over the years that's a particular that have stuck out to you that you've received?
Well, thank you, Chris. I've been blessed to have received a number of awards and over the years. And some of the ones that stick out to me the most are those awards that I've received for community involvement and community service. Those are critical. Some of those include the Justice Benham Award for the Georgia State Bar, and Justice Benham was the first African-American Chief Justice and first Black appointee to the Georgia Supreme Court. And of course, since that time, there have been 2 others who have followed him. But I received the award for community service during my time here in Atlanta, and the work that I've done and the boards that I've sat on and involvement that I had in the community. I also am excited about the Rainbow Push Coalition Award for Community Service that I received during my time at HUD. I've also, of course, the ones that you mentioned, the Who's Who and the Woman of Influence, because being able to make an influence or make a difference in the lives of people. I don't believe that getting an award just for the sake of getting an award is the end all. I believe you have to be able to have committed and done something that makes a difference in the lives of people. And so all of those awards that I received, one last one with at HUD, I received 2 Gears in Government awards, but one of those was for my involvement with the STEM program, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics for young children, trying to put the STEM program into programs that are instituted for young children. And that's something that I remain involved with. So those organizations and those awards that allow me to make a difference in the lives of people, community service, and changing people's lives and changing their trajectories, those are the most important to me.
Now, you attended Boston University School of Law, the Harvard School of Government. Your husband, Christopher Leggett, is a prominent, now you have to say it, the type of doctor he is.
Interventional cardiologist. He does procedures on the heart.
And you're a corporate attorney.
Mm.
Now, what in the world, during the times we're living in, made you take a government job?
Well, it's so funny. I got asked that question quite a bit. And, people would say, not only why would you make the transition from practicing law, but why would you go to HUD? And I answer that in just one, in 2 words, Secretary Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson. Of course, ultimately, I'm appointed by the president, but I was recommended by Secretary Carson. And I had the privilege of meeting him over 30 years ago. My husband trained at Johns Hopkins, and Secretary Carson became a mentor to him, but ultimately he and his wife became friends to us during our stay there in Baltimore. And that friendship has remained for 30 years. So when he asked me to serve, I looked at him doing the service. And when you look at a man who could look down in the brains of 2 infant children and separate the brains of those children, and when he looked down in the brains of young children also and created the hemispherectomy procedure, which helps stop seizures. And so when I see him as a man who looked at not at the impossibilities, because there were people who went before him. I looked at a man who saw possibilities. And because of that, and when he asked me, I certainly said, this is somebody that I will serve because I know that he's willing to make the sacrifice, he's willing to make the change, and he's willing to go in and try and do some wonderful things at HUD. And the thing that I really liked, he allowed us the flexibility and the independence to make whatever changes we felt needed to be made at HUD. So coming to HUD for me came down to the person who asked me to come, and that was Secretary Ben Carson.
Yes, ma'am. So with those experiences, you were with several large corporate, as a corporate attorney with several large law firms in the Atlanta area. What were the experiences that you brought from that time that you think carried over into your position as regional administrator for HUD?
Well, there were several, and I think leadership trumps everything. So the things that I learned in
No
terms
pun
of
intended.
yeah, the things that I learned in terms of leadership, being able to be innovative, being able to be inquisitive, to be a problem solver, were things that I brought with me in all things that I needed. I think specifically when I came to HUD, there ultimately was an article written about it, but when I came to HUD, all of the areas were generally new, but I am very adaptable. But I saw an issue when I came. There was something called choice neighborhoods, and choice neighborhood grants they're hard to come by, but they're given to housing authorities to help change the housing situation and the housing opportunities within a city. And so, so when I came, I met with all of my regional people because I think communications is critical. And that had not really been the case prior to me coming, but I said, I want to, have weekly or biweekly, initially weekly, then biweekly meetings from all of the regional individuals who head up these programs. And so I sat down and I heard about one of the programs for the Choice Neighborhood in Atlanta. And because of the experience that I had had with mergers and acquisitions with hospitals, I know that when you close a deal, that basically certain things are supposed to happen pretty soon thereafter. And there was a Choice Neighborhood grant that was given in 2015, but there had been no movement, there had been no groundbreaking, there had been nothing. And I thought that was odd. And I brought that because of my experience of knowing how deals are supposed to close and how they're supposed to move after they're closed. And so, it piqued my curiosity. And from there, I was able to find out that things were not moving as they should have moved. And I, of course, met with Mayor Keisha Bottoms at the time. I met with the Housing Authority. I met with our people in public housing, our individuals who are in charge of running that program. And I met with several other individuals. And so, and then I went to Washington and I said, we need to make sure we cannot allow this city to lose this $30 million grant because they're hard to come by. And once you lose it, it goes back into the treasury. So once it's lost, it's lost. There's no such thing as coming back or changing the circumstances. It's gone. And the people of Atlanta were deserving of that Choice Neighborhood grant. The mayor was deserving because one of her goals was to push for affordable housing. And we certainly didn't want the first thing on the plate to be the loss of a $30 million grant. And so that experience of knowing the structure of certain deals allowed me to come into that situation for the Choice Neighborhood grant and to work with the existing individuals and the people at the table to try and make sure that and we did more than try. We saved the Choice Neighborhood grant. We kept it from coming to a demise. And we didn't, and it wasn't just, I don't look to say, oh, look what I did. I look to say what we did. Because it's ultimately the people who suffer. If you allow that to go away, the $30 million, it's not coming back. And so if you allow that to dissipate and you allow that housing opportunity to be to disappear for so many people who are deserving. So that's one of many of the examples, and they ultimately did write about it because I was fairly new to HUD. So they thought that because I was new, that, you know, you
They didn't
can't,
expect you to be able to save that.
right, to be able to come in and save it. So, but it was, that's one of many experiences that, that I brought with me from my private experience.
Home, where my thoughts escaping. Home, where my music's playing. Home, where my love lies waiting silently for me.
You oversaw $519 million in community development, as well as $5.3 billion budgets in public and multifamily housing. How were those funds allocated across Region 4? Those are some pretty big numbers.
Well, every state, they're allocated based on numbers that are allocated per state. They're allocated per housing authority. They're allocated for multifamily, and for the the housing insurance, they are also allocated per state. The numbers that you have are probably, well, are actually higher now. That was back in 2018, 19 numbers. They grew for the numbers in 2020, and that's just the regular numbers. With the CARES Act funding, the multifamily, the public housing, those numbers rose exponentially, so that on top of the money that they were getting to help with housing and help with building multifamily units, they got additionally into the millions and millions, and nationwide it was into the billions, but those numbers were even larger because we were trying to help with COVID issues, with the homeless issues that resulted because of COVID. And so those numbers are spread against just the organizations that we talked about, public and Indian housing, multifamily housing, and then into the billions of dollars for insurance with
FHA loans.
right, with the loans, with the insurance.
So, and now, going back to referring to Atlanta and talking about the year that was changed, every time, even though it was just an email chain and you and I hadn't spoken, every time I saw it, whether it was a storm, whether it was the social justice that was going on in Atlanta, in the riots, I mean, everything that I saw going on, I would think like, "Ooh, she's working hard right now." Did you find it difficult to navigate with your position through in Atlanta as African American Republican and the tumultuous times that we are living in?
Well, the one of the things that I've always prided myself on is that I don't go by labels, and I don't address labels. So, when I came to HUD, I didn't come as a labeled person. I came to do what was necessary in order to get the job done. Looking back, the first day of the riots here in Atlanta, the morning of the riots, I was in a meeting with Secretary Carson, Vice President Pence, the head of the 100 Black Men. We were at a huge Black bank that we were there with other entrepreneurs here in Atlanta. And that morning we were talking about the payment protection program, and how the bank and how other individuals had benefited from it. And we were talking about what we can do to make things better. By that afternoon, late afternoon, the riots had started, and they had come in, torn up the HUD building, burned the flag, completely destroyed paperwork that, that we were obviously utilizing to get work done for housing. And I look at that and I say to myself, I could not allow myself to be in a position of saying, I'm this label. And so, what do I do as an African-American woman? Well, I look at a number of different things. I stand on the shoulders of so many people. I stand on the shoulders of my parents. But I go, during my tenure here, I've made a point of going to every civil rights museum in my region. I look back at Birmingham, Alabama, and I walked the streets of where individuals were beaten, where they were hosed, where they were bitten by dogs. I went to the 16th Street Baptist Church, where 4 little girls were killed. And I walked the museum where they showed the counters where they had replicas of the counters where people had segregated and integrated. Then I look at Memphis, Tennessee, and I was able to go in and see where Martin Luther King, in the room where he was assassinated, and out on the balcony where he was assassinated, and across the street where James Earl Jones shot him. I went to Selma, Alabama, and walked the Edmund Pettus Bridge, where people who had been fighting for the rights to vote and fighting for the rights of African Americans who endured all kinds of threats and negativity. And the city of Atlanta, where we have so many civil rights leaders who, such as John Lewis and of course Dr. King and Andy Young and many, many others, and see what they did. And so in Jackson, Mississippi, where Medgar Evers led a life of sacrifice and ultimately died for. So with all of these people that went before me, and the thing that really amazes me about those experiences is not just the names that we all recognize, but in those photos, there are hundreds of individuals that we will never know their names. Individuals who walked the bridge, individuals who sat at counters, individuals who made sacrifices as individuals so that I could stand on their shoulders. And so with that in mind, coming in the city of Atlanta, I can do nothing less. Whether I have the label of an African American who happens to be at the time, a Republican, who, whatever those, labels are, I look at the individuals who've gone before me and the sacrifices that they've made for me to be able to sit in the position that I'm in. And because of that, I cannot shrink with, behind adversity. I cannot allow myself to be daunted because the task is difficult. The task is hard. And the thing that I always kept in mind is, what are we here for? I'm not here as a Republican regional administrator. I'm here in this position to make sure that we continue doing the things that help the people that need the help that we're serving. And when I was, during my whole tenure at HUD, I never had, not one person ever approached me about anything political. It was always, what their need was, what can I do to help them? And that is the attitude that I think that we have to take in general. We can't look at Republican, Democrat. We need to look at what can I do to help in the service and providing service. And I'm fortunate to have been in such a great region that even with all of that going on, with our building being attacked, and part of our building being destroyed, the people inside, the people who work in the various areas, whether it's our lawyers, whether it was the individuals who put the packages together, no person suffered a loss or a break in service because of those things. They continue to do what was necessary in order to get the job done. So that's the attitude that we have to take. We stand on the shoulders of people who came before us, and we have to continue and work hard to get the job done, because there are people who are counting on us and are deserving of our best.
Yes, ma'am. In our conversations, you talked about a project that you're really proud to be part of in Miami and overseeing the renovation of a public housing area down there. You care to share that with the listening and viewing audience a little bit?
Yes, I'm not sure if the listening audience, and some of them probably are, particularly if they're from that part of the country, but Liberty City was one of the worst places in the country. It was one of the worst housing authorities. There was crime, there was poverty, and with no hope for the people there. And HUD came in along with the Housing Authority Director, private developments. This is a prime example of public-private partnerships where you can come in and make a difference and a change. And in Liberty City, not only was I able to come in for phase one, and if you can ever Google it and see the new construction that's gone on there, it's amazing. And then this past May, I was back down there for the opening of phase two for Liberty City. And I'll never forget, there was a woman, this was the first one was pre-COVID. I'm a hugger, but there was an elderly woman there, elderly African-American woman, and she gave me the biggest hug. And she said, I never thought that this was going to happen. I never thought I would be able to walk into a place like this and call it home. That's what it's all about. That's why we do what we do here at HUD. And there are other cities like that. Not just Miami, Nashville, Atlanta, Charlotte, other cities that have been the beneficiaries of that public-private partnerships where where determination can make a difference. And but that was from where it was and to where it is now. It's absolutely amazing.
I'm truly happy that you, well, one more, I have to deal with this based on everything that's happening in Texas right now, and
Right.
it's terrible. And you oversaw the worst region for weather issues. Was there anyone that stuck out in your mind that really kept you up at night that you had to deal with while you were?
Yeah, there are actually quite a bit, and you're right. We have one of the worst areas for disasters. The hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding. But one of the worst when I first came, the first year that I was here was Hurricane Maria down in Puerto Rico. I went there August before the hurricane, but then I went. But one of the things that I made a point of, and I told my people, I said, every time there's a disaster, I need to be on a plane to go down and see what the results of the disaster are. I need to walk the streets. I need to see what housing has been affected. And so, it's a lot of people would have probably thought I was crazy, but I said, look, I want to be on a plane to go down to Puerto Rico and see, walk the streets. And it was devastating. The people were out of their houses, out of their homes. I visited a shelter. There was a couple of shelters. One of the ones I went to, there was a young kid there who obviously couldn't go to school. He was trying to do some schoolwork in his cot. There was another young man that I threw a ball back and forth with, just to give him a little joy. But we also went into a house where a woman was, the flooding was so bad that she couldn't live in her house. We saw street after street after street. There is devastation. Later on, last year, they suffered an earthquake down in Puerto Rico, which is absolute. And looking at buildings that were flattened, and people who were completely devastated, had no place to go. I saw people living out in a park where, they put up tents. And so, and then, stateside, there was Florida, the Florida Panhandle. When I walked those streets, it looked like a bomb had gone off on those streets. It was absolutely devastating. And to talk to people who had lost their businesses, who had for generations had passed down their businesses, but no longer could do that. I went to New Bern, North Carolina, where it was devastated by flooding, and that had destroyed the entire housing authority complex. Walking those streets and talking to the people there. And then I went to a shelter in New Bern where there was a woman who I talked to with HUD. We are the second place that first you deal with FEMA, and then you deal with HUD. So FEMA comes in first and they do what they do, but HUD comes in afterwards for long-term housing. But even though it was not our time to go, I still wanted to go down and see and talk to people. And I remember talking to a woman and I said, we can't do anything for you right now. FEMA is the first responder and they're going to do this, but when they finished, we will be in. And the lady turned around and gave me the biggest hug. And she said, thank you for being here. Just thank you for being here. I couldn't do anything for her right then other than be there to support her. But just story after story and state after state, Tennessee, Mississippi, that have, weathered the storms, whether it's flooding, whether it's tornadoes. But my goal was to always be there, and so that I can see what happens on the ground and let people know that we're there for them. So it was very daunting, but the first one was Hurricane Maria, and then I went to the USVI too, where I walked the streets and saw houses completely devastated, multifamily units that were completely devastated by Hurricane Maria. This was 2 years later and they had not, been able to recover. So it's been, devastating, and it's been very difficult for people who are still trying to recover. We have given them funding. We've had given all of the states they've been given funding. We've also given billions of dollars now to Puerto Rico, but also monies to the USVI. But we're still in that process of trying to rectify a very difficult and devastating situation.
Wow, I mean, you brought back memories of storms that I had even forgotten about. And thank you for coming on. I had Joe DeFelice on, who originally introduced us. And the purpose of, somebody may ask, like, well, why would you, this is a new administration now. Well, COVID held up these interviews that I've been chasing you with, and your staff knows my name well. But also, I wanted the listening audience and viewing audience to know that your position exists, because you have a little known, huge role, and you've had a little known, huge role as regional director, and people typically do not know that position exists. Have you decided what's next for you?
I have not. I've been talking to a number of different people in the private sector who have expressed a big interest in utilizing my knowledge, and so I'm a person that believes, I'm a person of faith, so I believe that God will direct me to where I need to go, just like He brought me to HUD, and so I will let you know where I land next. But one last thing I did want to mention, one of the things that we established during my tenure there and under Secretary Carson were Envision Centers. Envision Centers were organizations that dealt with economic empowerment, educational advancement, health and wellness, and character and leadership. And we were able to put those in place. One of the things that was important is not just enough to give a person a home. We have to be able to give them hope and trajectory for a different future. And so the Envision Centers were a part of that. And also during COVID, many of these Envision Centers stayed open, feeding people, being with the children, giving them a sense of direction and hope during COVID. But the Envision Centers were amazing. And we left close to 20 in Region 4, which is there are 100 in the nation, but we had the largest in any region. We had close to 20. And one other thing I wanted to mention is our opportunity zones. Opportunity zones have been amazing. They have changed the face of many neighborhoods and are continuing to do that. They thought that it would take 10 years to have $100 billion investment. It's only been 2 years, and there's $75 billion of investment of opportunity zone monies into our communities. And so I think that I feel proud that we have, as a department and organization under Secretary Carson, have left so many things. And one last thing is our Foster Youth to Independence program, which provided funding and housing for young people who age out of foster care at the age of 18. They have no place to go. And we have in place a program that allows them to have vouchers for living up until they're 24. And also it gives them an opportunity to continue their education. So their wraparound services. So it's not just a house, but it's a change, an opportunity to change their trajectory and change their lives. So I'm so proud of all the things that we've done and that will continue. Those programs where they were not political, they were not, just relegated towards a particular party. They're party neutral. And so I hope and pray that those things will continue, those opportunities will continue for all of the people that we serve, not only in this region, but across the country.
Well, thanks for your leadership that has been driven, apparent, obviously, through faith as well as your head knowledge. And thanks for helping making my audience real East savvy. And I hope to be able to maintain contact with you because I'm sure you'll be doing more big things.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Christopher. I really appreciate it. I'm so glad we were able to connect, and I look forward to our meeting in the future.
You know how to help your clients find the home of their dreams, and we know the perfect mortgage can make that dream come true. We are Guarantee Rate Affinity, a joint partnership between the third largest retail mortgage lender and your company. We're here to help you look good to your clients and sell more homes. How? First, we make the process as simple, seamless, and awesome as possible. And that starts with our expert loan officers. You might have met some of them as they work alongside Coldwell Banker agents. Clients love our easy digital mortgage, which can have them ready to make an offer in minutes. We have over 100 loan products with some of the fastest turn times in the industry. And because our loan experts are fueled by the most advanced mortgage technology platform, we can help you and your clients at any time, from anywhere. Plus, you'll love tools like Loan Status Monitor that keeps you in the know, and Flash Close that shortens closings from hours to minutes. Above all, we're committed to the belief that your success is our success. So, when a buyer needs a mortgage referral, bring it home to the loan officers who work right alongside you to get dream homes closed. We are Guarantee Rate Affinity, and we are your mortgage company.